All right. Okay. So we are continuing this week's parsha. In this week's parsha, the Moshe's long final message to Klal Yisrael, his speech, his soliloquy, as he leaves them with what they will carry of his insight, advice, guidance, teachings for eternity. Which is why, as we've talked about, that each one of us spend 20% of our lives analyzing the speech. 20% is a pretty accurate term in the sense that um, we go through the cycle of Torah every year of our lives, and 1/5 of the Torah is this speech of Moshe, which means that 1/5 of our lives i.e., 20%, is devoted to Moshe's speech. And so every detail is important. We've talked about how Moshe has been sharing with us many of the original, the big ideas of Judaism, uh, which was Parshat Ve'etchanan. In Parshat Ve'etchanan, you had the Ten Commandments, you had the Shema Yisrael, you had kind of the big fundamental philosophical points, and that was Ve'etchanan. And we contrasted that with last week's Torah portion, which is the small things. The small things you need to do to keep God present in your life, which, as we pointed out, very powerful uh, uh, um, process, a very powerful tool, which is powerful in the sense that it yields incredible results with minimal effort, right? Which is always, everybody's looking for that magic diet, right? Where's the pill that I can take that then just automatically makes makes me as skinny as I want to be? Where's that small thing I could do that will just perfectly calibrate my relationship with God, right? And that is a bracha. We said last week that was one of the small ideas, something that most people are dismissive of, and yet has a really strong ability to achieve what it is that God asks of us. In the fifth aliyah of last week's parsha, it says "Ma Ata Yisrael," and now Israel. What is Hashem really asking of you, other than to fear Him, to love Him with all your heart and all your soul, do everything that He says? He said it seems to be that the Torah implies that this is a small matter, and he said yes, it is a small matter because the other way of understanding the word "ma" is "mea." "Mea" is the 100 brachas. It means 100 brachas a day. The small matter of making a bracha, but making a bracha properly and consistently can yield, in fact, this incredible result. Um, but now Moshe continues his study of contrasts, and we get to now Parshat Re'eh. And what way is Parshat Re'eh a contrast to the Parsha that preceded it, right? Ve'atchanan to Ekev was the big ideas, and last week was the small ideas. And we pointed out that just because they're small ideas doesn't mean they're not high impact, but rather they are incredibly high impact and very important. So now we go from Akev to Re'eh. In what way is Akev and Re'eh two parshas that draw contrast to each other?
Well,
Is
the
that
A is just mitzvah upon mitzvah upon mitzvah. It just
uh,
doesn't stop.
there's a lot of mitzvahs in Parshat Re'eh, but in what way, like to Akev? So something very obvious is one of the ways that there is a big contrast between Akev and Re'eh, and that is Akev V'haya Akev, and it will be on the heels of what's the word?
First word. Ray
Tishmil.
versus Akev. Yeah. Gotcha.
Tishmil, which means to listen, to hear, and
Yeah,
Re'eh is to see, right?
yeah.
Now, uh, we are not here checking. Moshe wasn't last week checking our audio capabilities, and this week he's checking our visual capabilities. We are talking, obviously, in both of those cases, that this is an intellectual hearing, an intellectual seeing, right? Do you hear what I'm saying, right? Do you see what I'm saying, right? We use these metaphors both in English and in Hebrew to speak
Sure.
to the medium of absorption of information or of a command, of an idea. And so last week we were saying that you have to hone your ability to hear, to absorb this through whatever metaphoric means it makes it comparable to hearing. And this week, Moshe begins and says, "Re'ei, see this that I have placed before you." Again, it's not that Moshe is testing if we have 20/20 vision. As Moshe is telling us, see this, intellectual. So, an interesting thing that last week Moshe begins by cajoling us to hear, and this week he is cajoling us to see. Right? Again, an interesting study in contrasts. Now, we've talked about this in the past, so we're not going to spend too much time on it, but which one of them is more advantageous in general, seeing something or hearing something?
Seeing. Sight is always first.
So Jerry says seeing, right? And God forbid, right? We know which is a more debilitating disability, to be deaf or to be blind.
Hearing.
Blind.
Right, that's why.
Right,
To be
blindness.
blind is the worst.
It's without,
The more
and obviously
debilitating.
things
Yeah.
Unless you're a
are,
musician.
yeah, but as a general rule, I think most people covet their ability to see more than their ability to hear, which makes it interesting because we don't say Re'ei Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What do we say?
Shema.
Shema Yisrael
Shema.
Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad.
They're important. All the senses are important.
Right, but it's actually in Hebrew. It is more common to use the word Shema. Elav tishma'un, v'hayayim shamoa tishma'un. Right. You shall listen, you shall listen, you shall listen, right? Not you shall see, you shall see. So it becomes a very interesting discussion as to what exactly is the difference between absorbing something through hearing and absorbing something through seeing, and if by all factors, seeing is more advantageous than hearing, then shouldn't that be what Moshe cajoles us to do all the time? Don't just see it, don't just hear it, see it, right? And as we said, that there is a seeing seems to be a far more impactful medium, right? We know that, for example, one of the big differences and one of the reasons that Israel is having a hard time in the court of public opinion is because this is the first war where horrific images are showing up in people's TikTok feeds, right, or Twitter feeds. Right? War is always horrific. Most people don't see it. You can hear the reports of war. You can even hear the numbers of casualties. But then you see one person, right? And you see one image, and that one image can really change your whole sense of how much you feel about this particular thing, etc. Also, I've pointed out in the past that if I was sitting with you in a room and you went in the room knowing that it was 12 noon. It was 12 noon. But then I told you, by the way, you know that it's pitch black outside. And you're like, no, it's not. If I happen to be really, really, really good, I am at convincing and I'm very, very compelling. Given enough time, I can convince you somehow that even though that when you walked into the room, you knew it was 12 p.m. Let's say maybe there was a solar eclipse, what have you, or maybe it is, it happened that you kind of blanked out and it's actually a lot later than you think. It is entirely possible. It would be improbable, but it is possible that I can eventually convince somebody that it is pitch black outside. Until what?
Until you saw it with your own eyes.
Very good. Until I pull back the curtains and you see the sun shining brightly in the sky. To which I then will turn around and say, don't disregard what you're seeing. It's not true. Right? It becomes infinitely harder, right? because seeing something makes something significantly more absolute. It just is. That's reality, right? And I think this speaks to the power of sight over hearing. And we're going to go back and talk about the advantage of hearing. But not surprisingly, one of the topics discussed in this week's Parsha is the concept of prophecy. Right? And the idea that prophecy is a real thing. Not only is it a real thing, it's something that we as Jews must believe in, must believe that God does this. It is one of the Rambam's, the Maimonides' 13 principles of faith, is the idea Shakel Menabeh Bnei Adam, that God gives prophecy to human beings. And that the very first one of them, the Rabban Shel HaNeviim, the first the teacher of all the prophets was who?
Moshe Rabbeinu.
Moshe Rabbeinu, very good, and that's by the way, it's entirely its own one of the principles of faith. So there's two principles of faith regarding prophecy. One is that God does this as a general rule. That if you say, it's ludicrous, poppycock, God doesn't sit there and talk to people. Never happened, never occurred. That you're in violation of that principle of faith that we Jews believe in. And more specifically, that there was a greatest among prophets who taught the rest how to be prophets, who, in a sense, wrote the playbook on prophecy, and that was Moshe Rabbeinu. So, I mean, we're not going to necessarily go into great discussions as to why it has to be two, why couldn't it just be one, why is it so important to not just believe in prophets, but to believe that Moshe was the first of all of them, but just the idea that there is prophecy. Now, why prophecy? Why prophecy? Why is it so important for there to be prophets? Why couldn't it just, in fact, be that we got a Torah, we study the Torah, and the Torah gets passed down one generation to the next generation, and we teach it, we learn, etc., etc. Why must there be periodically throughout history the idea that somebody spoke directly to God? And the answer is because this speaks to the advantage of sight over hearing. We all, therefore, without prophecy, then what we would all have is this legacy of hearing, of information passed down. And when we say hearing, we don't just necessarily mean hearing it through your ears. We mean, but the idea that I am absorbing information in a kind of a contemplative, intellectual way, versus something that I see, and that is a more visceral way. Right? That is a more visceral absorbing. A prophet brings that element of sight, that absolute sense of truth that comes to what we say in Hebrew as hitamtut, the absolute validity of what it is, comes through sight. Right? I can also, going back to it, I can convince you very easily that there is a species known as the bumblebee. And I will lay out. It has wings, but the mass of the bumblebee plus the size of its wings equals it is a flightless insect, because according to the laws of physics, the size of the wing and the mass of the body and whatever it is, it cannot fly. That is until what?
Until you get stung.
No, I'm saying if one person goes and convinces you that it can fly,
right? But then you see it.
But then somebody argues and says the point that they can very quickly unconvince you. Until what? Until you see a bumblebee fly, and then you will never be able to be unconvinced.
Right.
Because I saw it. I saw it with my own eyes. Right? The old expression, I'll believe it when I see it. Right?
Yeah, but don't believe your lion eyes.
Right. And that's why is that such a because it's a ludicrous statement, right? That's the reason why because if I'm seeing it with my eyes, that's it. That's the and God wants that the validity and the validation of the Torah and of God, etc., not be one that is based on an academic validation that the Torah is true, that whatever it is, and it makes sense, and it makes sense that God should hand this a volume, etc. But rather, there's also a very right to hearing something from an eyewitness, even if I didn't necessarily see it myself. But the person I spoke to did see it, or I'm reading the record of somebody who was there, right? That's a whole different level of validity. So prophecy is important because it adds this aspect of sight to the absolute validity of God's presence, and not only God's presence, but God's engagement with us. It makes it adds something significantly beyond a doctrine based on a book. It's real, it's seen. And more importantly, each and every one of us has this. We have this. We have this aspect of seeing God. There's a part of us. And to be able to understand this, I'm going to shift now to talk about what is the advantage. So saying so much advantage to sight. So what kind of advantage then? How could hearing, how could Shemiah compete? What advantage does hearing have over seeing? Why is it that even myself at times I will say, do you hear what I'm saying? Rather than do you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Intuitively, subconsciously, why do we sometimes switch? I could say see. Isn't seeing a far better, far more robust, far more dynamic way of absorbing something? Shouldn't I always go to seeing? Shouldn't I say, do you see what I say?
Aren't some people visually oriented and other people are
So I will make an argument that, of
auditory
course, you have people that are, specific, whatever it is, but there's also a general rule. In certain things, in certain aspects, we're all visually oriented, and in certain aspects, we're all audially oriented in this metaphor. And let me clarify. When I see a bee flying, right, how much of the mechanics of how that is working, how many times the bee is flapping its wings, what's the size of the wing versus the body mass, my comprehensive understanding of what is occurring there, do I have?
None.
I was
None.
going to say none.
That's the point. To a certain degree, I can see it, but the crutch of seeing something is that's all I need to do. I need to just see it. And at that point, it has already had such a profound impact on me that I'm not really yearning or seeking more necessarily. Right? In other words, to sell me the idea that this insect can fly visually versus audially is a very different approach entirely. With sight, I need to see it for a second. I could comprehend nothing of it, and I will already have accepted it and be able to move on. Which means that on the one hand, it's very impactful, very powerful, but also very superficial. Versus if I have to convince you and you can't see it, or if I have to, right? How many times has this happened to you where somebody says, as a matter of an exercise, you've taken a sight, and then they say, now close your eyes and I'm going to describe it to you. And there's going to be a depth then, if they could do it well, to your appreciation of what it is that you actually already saw. The understanding, the words, the description, the explanation is going to add something, which is why sometimes you walk through a museum, right? And you're looking at something, and then somebody says, let me explain this to you. I don't need it to explain it. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the whole thing. What would you need to explain to me? I'm looking at it.
I was thinking about Paula's explanations of her paintings when you were saying that.
But that's hearing. It's a comprehensive step-by-step process, which takes and adds layers that I don't necessarily seeing. I can only see what's on the surface. to probe deeper, I can't do that with sight, not unless I have X-ray vision. Audio, somebody says, let me explain step by step what you are seeing. Right? What you are seeing here, and that's oftentimes why a picture is dangerous, right? Because you have no context to what you're saying. Let me explain to you. And sometimes that's the point. I don't want you just to see. I want you to hear what I'm saying. And kind of intellectually, we know this, subconsciously we know this. When I'm giving over a very profound idea, profound idea, I say, do you hear what I'm saying? Versus if I want to see if you just got it. Did you get it? Do you see what I'm saying? Hearing means that you're going to take the time to invest, to step by step, to dig, to get a more comprehensive, three-dimensional appreciation of this thing, not just its length and its breadth and its depth, but also its character and its nature. That the visceral experience of seeing something does not really provide.
Well, of course, we're excluding reading for both
No, reading is a way of is hearing.
Right, reading is hearing, so that would be for deaf people also.
Correct.
They would read,
Right. No, but I mean, in this metaphor,
right.
Hearing, right? When I'm reading something, my brain is hearing it from, happens to be through my eyes, but it's being explained to me in the medium of letters and words.
It's intellectually.
Yeah. Yes, Paula.
I don't want to throw a wrench in this terribly, just a little wrench.
Yeah, okay.
We are told to serve Hashem b'chol me'odecha. This says to me, with the hearing, with the seeing, with the Ganze Megillah, everything. So which is more important? Which is better? It doesn't matter. All of it I need to serve God.
Paula, you are true to form today, as you always are. Because guess what? My point is eventually going to be.
Well, you'd wanted to end the class early, so.
Yeah, no. So,
That's right.
So what I'm saying is, what we are pointing out, and this is important, is that each one has a distinct advantage, which is why you should understand that these are not interchangeable, or not to look at it as either or. But more importantly, and in the order that we had it, sometimes, especially when we want to make an idea very real, it's actually better to start off the way the Torah does. First hear, then see. Because once you've seen something to a certain degree, that visceral experience crowds out everything else. Right? A lot of times they'll say, before I take you to see this painting, let me first, or before I take you to, let me prep you, let me explain, and then you can be open to see it, right? What's better, always, in the order of things? To read a book and then see the movie, or to see the movie and then read the book? The problem is, once you've seen the movie, to read the book, it's kind of like, well,
it's always best to read the book first.
Right, that's the point. You read the book because there's you're sitting with it, you're marinating it in it, and then what's missing is the visceral experience of it, which makes it real, right? But the Torah says, Ekev Tishmun, first understand and comprehend the relationship with God, and then experience it. Then whatever. But ultimately, the main point is, Paula, that we need the Tishmun, and we need the Riyah, because, as you said, for that exact reason, you cannot suffice. Maybe you say, you know what? Yes, I understand that each one has an advantage over the other one. So ideally, I'll probably want to try both. But if I'm, feeling particularly lazy, or I feel particularly, in one direction or the other, my predisposition is to one or the other, then I'll suffice with it. But for the exact reason Paula quoted, B'chol me'odecha, we have to serve God with every fiber. And what does it mean, every fiber? With every unique characteristic and every unique talent and every option and tool available to us. Because each one brings something that the other one cannot possibly bring. Which is why you can say, we have the greatest Torah scholars. What do we need prophets for? Because then you have the Shmiya, but you don't have the Re'iyah. You don't have somebody that says, I just spoke directly with God. You know, it was a visceral interaction. And more importantly, you have to have both elements. You have to have your intellectual part of it. You have to have the soul that is striving to understand and comprehend God, ala Shmiya, and the part of your soul that sees God and is telling you, reporting back to you about that. There's a part that says, Mazlayu Chazi. There's a part of your soul that sees God. Now you can say, okay, this sounds a mumbo jumbo and something that's very ephemeral, and maybe in my subconscious is what. Talk practically to me, Rabbi. I'll say very simple. There are two aspects to your sense of the validity of God. One is because you understand. Because you look around the world and say, this couldn't possibly have happened by accident or randomly. You see the symphony and the structure, the tuned creation, how unbelievable it is that everything works in such a fine tuned manner. And we know that even if you saw the letters mom on a piece of paper, MOM, nobody would assume that just happened to be pencils falling and smudging ink or whatever or graphite in just in that perfect spelling. But that somebody did that, and that is something as rudimentary and as one-dimensional as 1, 2, 3, 4. 8 strokes and 1 circle of a pencil on a piece of paper.
The mom.
Mom, yeah. If I'm going to do it, I might as well get the right amount. But and then you look at even the smallest of organisms, and you realize how unbelievably comprehensive it is. Forget organisms. Go to one atom and say how unbelievable it is. And you want to say that is a result of just randomness, that this wasn't designed. So intellect, whatever it is, validates God, but all that's Shmiya. And in that is where you can grow. And the more you know, the more you understand, the more you come to a sense of awe of God's majesty and a sense of love for his kindness and his mercy and his giving and his etc. That is all the intellectual pursuit of Shmiya. And with each one you can add a brick. But then there is also every person's instinctual sense that there is a creator. And that creator knows me and cares about me. It's instinctual. We each have it. Which is why even a child has an incredibly strong feeling about God. And why to this very day, did you know this statistic? 96% of people polled around the world believe in some higher power that falls under the general definition of God. Now, obviously, different religions and different whatever it is have doctrines have different specificities in regards to what this is. But this is not supposed to be the case. All the scientists right now, all the agnostics and all the atheists are like, how did we fail so utterly? You know, for centuries now, we've been pushing this idea that there is nothing, that science is science, and it's just science, and it's nature, just nature. And yet, is there anything else where there is that big of a consensus? We don't even agree what's a man and what's a woman anymore.
No, it's so weird.
Rabbi,
and yet about this thing that none of us can touch with our 5 senses. We know it's 96%. That is near absolute consensus. Again, I'm not going to say that it means in any way that there is a consensus on the details and the specificities. But the fact is that 96% of people on this planet agree that there's something that is beyond, that is an authority or a driver or a consequential element that, as we said, falls under the general terminology of God, that they could say, do you believe in God or in a God? That 96% of the people will say yes to that, is a remarkable proof that there's something significantly deeper than just intellect and understanding that validates the presence of God. It is visceral. It is instinctual. It is because your soul sees God and knows it, even if it can't explain it. I don't need to be able to explain why a bumblebee can fly to know with absolute fact that it can, because I saw it. End of story. And ultimately, how many of us are prophets? And I would venture to say, I would submit to you that one of the reasons that it is one of the 13 principles of faith, even though it seems to be obscure and at this point obsolete, is because, no, the prophets were in a small group of a fringe group that existed in the far off past. Every one of us is a prophet. And what do I mean by that? Because Judaism tells us that the moment of at Sinai, everybody saw God. Everybody. Everybody who? Who's everybody? Everybody that was part of that generation? No. All our souls were there.
Yes.
All our souls were there. So when the prophet comes and says, I am telling you that I saw God, Elav Tishma'un, our parsha tells us, you have to listen to him. That's the prophet inside each one of us, the part of us that says, I know, I saw God. I know God exists. And then there's the cynical part of your mind, that the pseudo-intellectual part of your mind says, can't be. I can't taste God. I can't touch God. Right? I can't smell God. And with my eyes, my physical eyes, I don't see God. So it can't be. No. Listen to that voice inside of you, that part of your soul that says, I saw God. Or even better, I see God. God is as real to me as anything else I see. Because ultimately, when you're looking at the world, you're also looking at God. That is why the Hebrew word for a miracle is nes. Nes means what? Supernatural? Nes means a sign. What's a signpost? A signpost is to draw your attention to what is truly here, right? That's what a sign is. Any kind of sign is trying to tell you you are probably, without this sign, not going to really notice what this situation is or what this is. The sign doesn't create a new situation. The sign is informing you as to what the situation is. Right? That's a sign doesn't create the circumstance. Oh, it's not like, oh, you know what? This wouldn't be dangerous if there wasn't a sign. Right? Too many people, unfortunately, are foolish in that way. It's like, well, if there wasn't this, why do they have to put the sign? Now I can't do it. No, they put the sign because you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Right? If this is dangerous, it's not dangerous because there's a sign that says it's dangerous.
It's just a recognition of reality.
It's a recognition of reality. It's informing you of the reality. So when we call a miracle, a moment, right, where nature gets pulled back and you are seeing the divine, and the Torah calls that a sign. What's the sign? Why is it calling it a sign? It's trying to say this is always the reality. The miracle is just drawing your attention to what is. You're seeing God now in this moment. It's always this way.
You know what it reminds me of, Rabbi? The concept that I learned that a holiday is just a recognition of the energy of that day. It's not
Correct.
that we artificially say today is Purim. It's because
Correct.
that day has Purim energy.
Exactly right. Every day has a particular thing, and the holiday is the way that we acknowledge it, that we respond. We are not manufacturing the reality, we are responding to the reality. The day is Shabbos, whether you light Shabbos candles or not. But because it's Shabbos, how could you not light Shabbos candles? How can you not make Kiddush? How can you go about your regular day? Today is Shabbos. It's Purim not because we read a Megillah and we give out Mishloach Manot. That is the way we acknowledge the day. Ultimately, when we see a miracle, it's not that God all of a sudden showed up. You know, the day was just regular, nature was just regular, and then God came in and he intervened. He stepped in this moment, and then he's going to go and he's going to pack his bag and his whole magic showcase, and he's going to head out. And then this is going to return and revert to the mundane. The miracle is a peek as to what really is at all times. So when you look with your physical eyes and you're looking out the world, you're looking onto the face of God. But you need to be disposed to that. You need to be willing to listen to the prophet. You need to be willing to see. And that's why Moshe says, last week you listened. And you know, in the V'etchanan, we had the Shema Yisrael, you listened. Akev, you listen to the big ideas, you listen to the little details. Now it's time to see. You say, what do I don't need to see. I understand already. I understand. I bought into it. You don't need it. I'm on board. Yes, that was very necessary. We needed to have you do that. We needed to have comprehensively understand the depth and the quality and the nature of things and really ponder it and contemplate it and develop a comprehensive understanding of it. But now you need to see it so that it becomes real. It becomes visceral. It becomes what you understand is not something that you do on top of your daily life. It's not like, okay, here's reality, and I'm going to add a little schmaltz to my reality. I'm going to add a little spice. I have my life, and now I'm going to add a little feeling and substance to it. No, this is reality. This is nature. This is your world. This is your life. It's not an add-on. It's clarifying and revealing to you what always is. You have to listen to what the prophet is seeing, or in this case, pay attention and absorb and accept what you yourself are seeing. And that is why, while last week and the week before, we comprehensively walked through all the Shmiya, the Shema Yisrael to the Ekev Tishmu, the big ideas and the little ideas. Moshe says, not good enough. Now re'eh. Now you have to see. All right, everybody?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you all. That's
Good
very
Shabbos, good Shabbos,
Good job.
everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
see you. Bye.
All the best.